First, you will want to take the bottom track and insert it into the door opening as shown. A box of shims will be provided by Origin with every order. After placing the bottom track, you will want to put shims in place next to the pre-drilled holes to make it level. Remember, the bottom track needs to be level to prevent problems later. If you must drill into concrete, now is the time to do it. While keeping the piece leveled and in place, drill where needed using a 3/16 drill bit that is at least 8 inches long. This will be the drill bit you use throughout if you are drilling into concrete. Also, after drilling, take the bottom track out and clean it thoroughly. Mark the shim locations within the opening and clean it as well. Then, take each piece of frame, lay them out on the ground to prepare to connect them together. Make sure all the pieces are facing the same direction on the ground. When connecting the header to the jamb, make sure to remove the top piece of weather stripping before joining them together. Do the same if you have the standard track with the riser for the bottom track. Use the mallet to put the pieces together. Not a lot of force should be required, and excessive force could lead to damage. I always thought that if it can't be fixed with a hammer, you're just not hitting it hard enough. Well, this is not the case here. If the pieces don't seem to join correctly, please recheck the alignment before forcing them together. Once you have the frame put together, put shims back in their marked locations and lay sealant over and in between the shims for the bottom track to sit in. Lift the frame by the jambs with a partner and gently place it within the door opening, aligning with the pre-drilled holes. You're going to need something to hold everything in place while you screw it all in, and the wind bag, shown here, is very useful for this. However, you must use a stack of shims and pry them into place above each end of the header. To prevent any water leaks and to weatherproof, fill the holes in the bottom track with sealant before screwing it in, or alternatively, dip the screws in sealant before installing, and also apply some to the head of the screw once in place with your finger. Install fixings into all pre-drilled holes in the bottom track. Next, gently align the jambs to be as flush as possible with the tracks. Now, you can screw in the frame to the opening through the pre-drilled holes throughout the jambs. Make sure the jambs are plumb to the opening before fixing them into place. To make things easier for now, you can use 3 out of the 5 screws to hold it in place. The other 2 will need to be put in later. Make sure that the jambs are plumb in the other direction, using shims placed behind them, and then screw them in as well. Once the sides of the frame are in place, pry the top piece down onto them and shim in tight to where the header piece cannot be lifted off the plastic connectors with fixings. Then screw in the 2 ends of the header. Tighten the screws enough to where you cannot pull the shims out with your hands. Use shims in the middle of the top track to ensure that the header is not bowed, and then fix into place. After installing the frame, we will move on to installing the doors themselves. First, locate the trolley parts, which should be in packaging as shown. Take the bottom part of the trolley and insert it into the opening within the bottom piece of frame. Next, remove the pin from the other bottom trolley piece and ensure that there is exactly a 5mm gap or 1 blue shim in the part that slides into the wheel portion of the trolley. Then, insert the top portion of the trolley into the bottom with forks pointing toward the opening direction of the doors. Now, locate the small black top trolley wheels from the Ziploc bag from the component box. Insert both into the header as shown. Locate the top trolley and hang it from the inserted wheels. Before inserting each door, make sure that the protective bushings are present in each of the hinges. Each door is labeled with an X according to where it is placed when viewed from the exterior. Now, identify the first door. It will be the one with an X indicating that it is on the side with the hinge jamb. If you have the hinge jamb on both sides, you can start placing doors from either side. Make sure all 3 hinge pins are in place for the first door and lower it onto them gently. For the second door, only the top and bottom pins should be in place. Again, simply lift and lower it gently into place onto the first door. You must carefully close and lock the first 2 doors into place by rotating the secondary handle. Now is a good time to locate and keep close 2 important tools, along with pins which we removed from the trolley forks. First is the provided Allen key from the fastener kit. Second is the blue glazing paddle. Pick up the third door and make sure that this time only the middle pin is in place. Again, gently lower it onto the second door while open, but this time make sure to temporarily place a screwdriver through the top pinhole to hold the door in place as shown. Next, focus on aligning the bottom trolley with the bottom hinge between second and third door and lift the door onto the trolley. Each pin has a flat side, shown here, that must be aligned with the flat spot inside of the trolley piece when inserting it. If it is not aligned, it will not go in. Place the pin and guide it through the holes. Taking the glazing paddle, gently tap the pin into place until flush, making sure it stays aligned the entire way. Place the screw that came with the pin into the other side of it, then simply tighten until snug. Now, do the same process with the top trolley, except this time, the pin goes in from underneath. Now repeat the process for the remaining door panels until all are in place and you have reached either the lead door or a sliding mulligan. When closing the lead door for the first time, ensure that there are no obstacles that are preventing the door from closing smoothly. If contact occurs, adjustment will be the next step. Check the gap top to bottom with the 3mm green shim and see if the gap needs to be made larger or smaller. Adjust the shims behind the jamb accordingly. Make sure the gap is 3mm on the other side as well. Once gap is adjusted as needed, make sure the door locks properly by lifting the handle and turning the deadbolt. If you are installing even-numbered doors that open all in one direction, you will need to install a sliding mulligan or astragal after all the door leaves are in place. Remove the middle hinge piece from the mulligan and set it aside. Open the last two door leaves and align the mulligan in place so it can be connected to the trolleys. Connect the mulligan to the trolley the same way you did with the doors. Once in place, reinstall the mulligan center hinge piece, making sure the bushings are tight to each other. Now is the time to insert the remaining screws into the pre-drilled locations on the frame. Place shims near each pre-drilled hole and then screw the frame into the opening. Do this for all shim locations, being sure to put the shims above the screws so that they stay in place while the screws are not tight. To check if the header is level throughout, open the doors all the way. Then while closing them again, observe the pins through the top wheels to see if they are moving up and down through the wheel while the doors are closing. If they stay in line, you're on the right track. If the door does not latch in place with a relatively small push, then you need to adjust the center keep. This process is the same even if the door is locking into another door instead of the side jamb. You can do this by slightly loosening the screws on the top and bottom of the latch and then simply pushing out the pieces shown. And after retightening the screws, the door should close correctly. After making sure that the top of the lead door aligns perfectly with the top of the side jamb, you can move on to the final steps. Now we move on to installing the D handle. First, you should remove the screw from the pin, and then the pin itself from the handle. Align the handle in its position between the first two doors. Then insert the pin into the top of the handle, making sure the pin stays aligned as it is tapped into place with the glazing handle. Once it's flush, put the screw in the bottom of the handle as previously done. Make sure that that screw is not too tight, however, as the handle must be able to move with only slight resistance. If you are installing doors opening in, you need to install half of the hinge, which you can find in the box. Next, the piece of the weather stripping in the header must be put back into position. Make sure that it is cut to the proper length so that it reaches the gap shown here. Gently feed it back into position. Moving on to the glazing. First, you must remove all the glazing beads from the interior side of the door. Work on one panel at a time, making sure to keep track of which bead belongs where. 3 yellow and 1 red shim must be placed into the door before the glass is placed. The final locations for the shims are highlighted with stickers in each position. In order to place the glass easily, place 2 yellow shims on the bottom, sticking out of the frame as shown. Now pick up the glass and place it gently on top of the shims. Carefully push the glass all the way into the opening. Remembering which one of the shims has a sticker under it, rotate it into its final position by gently lifting the glass with the glazing paddle. Also, remove the other shim from the bottom and put it in its final location on the side of the glass. Next, take the red shim and put it in place on top of the glass in the opposite corner from the bottom 2 shims. Then place the final yellow shim on the side as shown. Replace the top, bottom, and side glazing beads once the glass is in its final position. Find the included glazing rubber gasket. Each piece will need to be cut to size, top, bottom, and sides for each pane of glass. Take the bottom piece and make sure there is enough space between the glass and the bead. Now insert the gasket as shown, with the concave edge towards the glass and the lip hanging over the edge of the bead. Gently feed it in as shown, making sure not to stretch it. Repeat the same process for the top. For the sides, start by cutting the edge on a little bit of an angle to copy the slope given by the top and bottom piece. Now we can move on to placing the main door handle. Put the exterior handle into place and then tighten the screw so that it stays in place, but not all the way down. Do the same now with the interior handle. To prevent damaging the handle, never use a power drill. Stick with a hand screwdriver for this step. Once both handles are in place, you can finish tightening. However, do not over-tighten, as it could affect the functioning of the handle. Now slide the handle cover pieces into place and snap them into position. On the sides of each handle are hex key screws. The first is tightened all the way, and then the second is placed in the same position so that the screw is flush when finished. This is done on both sides. Now, you must make sure that all panels are level throughout. The way to tell if the panels are level is to see if the top weather strip is tight and uniform throughout all the panels. If this is not the case, then the toe and heel plate will need adjustments. If no adjustment is necessary, you will still need to tighten the toe and heel plate to the glass to ensure the weight of the glass will not settle over time. To adjust the toe and heel plate, open all the doors and stack them to the side. With a 4mm Allen key, turn clockwise until it becomes difficult to turn, or, if an adjustment was needed, turn the key until aligned. Now, we will install the magnetic keeps. Position the two halves of the magnetic keeps between the lead door and the adjoining door so that the handle does not hit the adjoining door. Use a pencil to mark the position. Using a 9/64 drill bit, drill through 2 layers of metal and attach magnetic keep and install the cover plate. The second keep is installed to be aligned with the first when closed. Place the two halves of the magnetic keep together and then open the lead door. Mark the position and install the second keep using the same process as the first. The final step is to seal both side jams' connection to the bottom track, and then seal the joint between the top of the side jam and the top track. To cover the holes in the side jams, use the fixing plugs provided in the Ziploc bag in the component box. This is to be done after the inspection so as not to prematurely cover the screws.